And get started.
Like the cigarette or
A copy of the Open Meetings Act is located on the wall right inside the door. We will go around the table and do introductions so everyone knows who we are. Mary Ann Borgeson, Douglas County Board.
John Holman with Burlington County.
Wade Garing with HDR.
Bruce Carpenter, HDR.
Jill Lorenz, County Finance Director.
Mike Boyle, County Board. Mark Kraft, County Board.
John Christensen, UNO, and Building Commission Board.
Ben Gray, I'm outnumbered by the county board.
David Levy, Commissioner, Omaha Housing Authority.
And I'm Joel Peterson, legal counsel for this board.
Diane Carlson, Deputy County Administrator.
Do you want to go ahead and just introduce yourselves?
Oh, Larry Storer.
I'm still Bob Karen, still an architect.
John Ringer. David Carey, resident realtor.
Patrick Bloomingdale, and I'm still a county administrator. Now, hopefully.
Luis Jimenez, co-director of North Omaha Information Support Everyone and executive director of Parker Action Alliance.
Okay, welcome everyone. First agenda item is approval of the minutes from our April 25th, 2019 meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any questions or comments?
We have some corrections.
Oh, you have some corrections?
I think they've already.
David.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. You want to call roll?
Morrison,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Christensen.
Yes.
Item 2, board comments, any at this time? Item 3, we'll have an economic analysis presentation done by Bruce Carpenter. Bruce?
Thank you. Actually, it's just a briefing of the report that was done by Dr. Goss and his team, Scott Strain and Alex Lalick. And this has been presented at the Douglas County Board meeting. It's been distributed to all city council members and all the Douglas County Board members. I think it's on the Douglas County site and available there. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. This shows the benefits and costs. It's of a new Douglas County Youth Center, but it's primarily related to the opportunity to keep kids, reduce the number of kids in detention, and what the impact that has. It's based on a few assumptions, and there might have been some misunderstanding of some of those assumptions based on statements in some of the meetings. One, it looks at reducing the number of kids in detention. So we looked at average daily population currently of 80. We picked a point a day in time, and then assuming that if we could reduce that number to 40. So it's the average daily population of 40. It's not the size of the facility. So it's a reduction in the number of kids that are in detention. And that's also based over 2 time periods. One is 20 years, looking at the 20-year window and what the impact that has on the local community economy. 2 is there's also a column that shows a 30-year look that extends the number out. And I think that's this table here. So just 2 parameters. The other parameter that is based in logic, but not a perfectly estimated number, is that the bond allocated for the youth center would be $30 million. So if the construction cost right now we're saying is 22.5, there's some bond cost and some other soft costs related to that. I don't think, all of these can be used at a different average daily population. You could assume different bond costs. But this is just looking in a broad way what the opportunity for economic impact would be. And this table in the executive summary identifies a total savings benefit of $164 million over 20 years, or $218 million over 30 years. And a big part of that is reducing recidivism, and on the human side, increasing the educational attainment opportunity for the kids if they're not in detention. There's also operation savings, and that would just look at if there were 80 kids and there are eight room modules, there would be 10 staff for those 80 kids. If there's 40 kids in eight room modules, there'd be 5 staff. So some of that operational savings is the opportunity to reduce some of the staff, and that's over 3 shifts. So those numbers apply to 3 shifts, so it'd be 30 to 15. So there's other operational savings, but part of that is the cost of staffing. So that's just in general terms how this was built, and I'm not going to pretend to be able to answer any of the questions that Ernie and his team would be able to address. I think the one statement that Alex made, and when they first brought a summary to us, is that these costs, these benefits to the community can't be overstated. They're a pretty conservative group. If you know Ernie Goss, he's a pretty conservative economist. So they took that approach in the study, but they're saying the costs are great, no matter how you bring it. The opportunity to first keep kids out of detention, or keep them there at the shortest period of time we can, and reduce the average length of stay, reduce the average daily population, has significant economic benefits. It's not the reason to do what we're doing. The reason to do it is for the kids, but this is a follow-on. There's also, it makes sense from an economic perspective.
Very good. Are there any questions or comments from board members on this? Again, after reviewing, you do let us know.
Well, for me personally, what I've heard from people who apparently know this, not this particular part of it, but they talk about co-joining this kind of thing and doing all the things that are now built into this program with other organizations being involved, that if you reduce a percentage of kids that never end up then in prison, the tax dollars that are saved for community, for the state, for whomever, is rather significant as well. And that doesn't get talked about as much as perhaps it would be helpful for people to understand. And I was in Minneapolis, totally unrelated to all of this, 3 years ago on a project, and one of the things that was brought up there is that they had benefited from keeping kids from re-prison because of the kinds of services they provided, and they said bottom line there is it is a tax reduction.
So nationally, the studies show usually $5 return on $1 of investment. That's fairly standard. So we wanted to actually look at it, what it means to Douglas County, and it's in that range of $5. It's $4.17. The other thing, this is that I learned, is this is a meta-analysis. So this is based on over 500 other studies that have been done and then regionalized for Douglas County. So it's a pretty broad look at what these benefits could be.
I think
It
that's,
seems-
go
It
ahead.
seems to me that there are a lot of people in the public that I've had the privilege to talk to that are not aware of this being an upside beyond serving the kids and their family.
It's just your point, Bruce, about this being an analysis based on many, many other projects and actual data. I read in the paper some criticism of this, or questioning of the savings due to reduced recidivism number, and I'm certainly not an economist, but I understand how economic modeling works a little bit. I've dealt with it, and that's where those numbers come from, is a model, but that model is based on empirical data from hundreds of actual
Right.
measured outcomes.
Right.
And so is it an exact number? No. Is it a prediction? Yes, but is it a prediction based on a tremendous amount of actual data and used in many, many contexts to estimate exactly these kind of things? So, very common practice and great information to have. So, thank you for putting that together, summarizing that for us.
I think, the comment was fantastical, I think, which was a
Mhm.
great term. And I think, looking at it, it is a big number, but I also think it's based in good research. So.
And I'd say, on the other hand, the number on the line above that, the increased educational attainment contribution, looks very small to
Yeah.
me, just
Yeah,
my
that's
reaction.
right.
So
Right.
balance those out. Maybe if one looks too big, the other one I think looks way too small.
Yeah, thank you.
And again, I'll double check to make sure it's on our website, that it was supposed to be being posted to that for everybody to have access. We do have some action items today. The first being an affirm replacement of PJ Morgan by appointment of Chris Rogers to the board. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any
So I will
questions?
clarify, you know me, on my motions, I like to do them in writing. So this one, actually, we state the members of the board in the bylaws. So I wanted to make sure that we took out PJ and put Chris Rogers in there. So that's what the written consent provides for. PJ and Chris are both not here today, so your bylaws can be changed with a 2/3 majority. So it will require all four of you to approve this change, but the county has already changed it, so you're affirming what the county has requested.
But
So what do you need, is a separate motion or?
The motion and vote is fine. We'll follow it up with the paperwork.
Okay.
But just to be clear, the motion is to amend the bylaws to affirm this change. Is
Yep.
that right? Okay.
Call roll on that one.
Ferguson,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Item 4B is approval of a professional service agreement with Burlington Capital Construction Services, LLC. And this is again subject to funding approval. And I don't know.
So, yes, I will take that. So you've got some items in your board packet there marked BB. So again, I like the motion with a written consent for the records. What you have, essentially, we have the same agreements that have been on the website for all three of the next items. So these contracts have been prepared for this project since last December and available on the website since that time. We did have a couple of minor changes, so there is an amendment to each. There's Amendment 1 that you'll be approving today as well. So what you're doing is, with the amendment, is changing the site to the MUD site primarily. And we had to allow for the fact that the Public Building Commission is going to own the land. So that's that second page that looks like this. It has BB at the top. Public Building Commission, we're inserting there. And then it's more particularly described in the 17th Amendment and the bond financing agreement, how the ownership between the county and the Public Building Commission will work. So we just make reference to that. So all of the three items that we have today have that same change. In the Burlington Capital, which is the first one out, we did clarify the date. So it made it May of 2019 instead of December of 2018. and also clarified owner's representative is the role that this board is playing. So those are the two changes for Burlington Capital. So we're approving the contract with the Amendment 1 to change the date and the site to the MUD site.
Is that an amendment of the whole, or do we have to?
Yeah, I wanted
If
to
it's
do
an
it by,
amendment of the whole, it's one vote. If it's-
I wanted to do it that way, but I wanted also to be able to say, this is the contract that's been on the website since December.
Okay.
So I have a one-page amendment that we're also approving.
Okay.
So the motion should,
Be to
again,
move Amendment A, and that would include, and I think procedurally, we would only have to take the one vote.
Yep.
Okay. I move Amendment A.
Second.
any questions or comments?
Ferguson,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Item 4C is approving the design services agreement with HDR Architect, Inc., again, subject to funding approval.
So we do need a vote on the main motion after the amendment, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Do we have to vote on the main?
Main,
yeah.
If it's an amendment of the whole, we have to do, it would seem, I thought we would have to just make that one motion.
Well-
But we have to do okay, well,
Yeah.
I'll amend it, okay. I'll
So-
follow your rules.
Okay.
So then I'll move the item as amended.
The contract as amended.
Contract as amended.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Roll call.
Ferguson.
Yes.
Levy.
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Okay. So now, item 4C.
Yeah, and again, I marked these Roman numeral 5C on your packets, but same situation here, Amendment 1, and then the actual motion to approve that. So what we have for you in this one, it's the same change, adding the Public Building Commission and changing the site. Then we also do have additional services that were required under the HDR agreement. So again, the contract stays the same, the fees stay the same, with the exception that we're adding $180,000 for basic services and then doing the geotech, the wind study, elevators and food service and laundry services for the new site for an additional fee of $278,000. We mentioned this when we talked earlier to this board, that those additional services would be needed to change the site to the MUD site. So again, I think voting on the amendment and then on the main contract.
Is there a motion for the amendment?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
Ferguson,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Gray.
Yes, as amended,
And now, do we have a motion as a whole?
as amended.
As amended. Second?
Second.
Questions or comments? Roll call?
Ferguson,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
And item D is approving the construction manager at-risk agreement with Kiewit Building Group, and again, subject to funding. And we're doing the same thing on this
Right,
one.
so Amendment 1 makes the same site change to allow for the Public Building Commission ownership and the MUD site. Then there was a typo in paragraph 4, so we corrected that as well on the ownership.
Okay, we got a motion to approve the amendment.
Motion.
Second.
Questions or comments? Roll call?
Ferguson,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Gray.
Yes,
And now a motion on the whole.
as amended.
As amended.
Second.
Roll call?
Ferguson,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Okay, we will now move to public comments, and I will remind everyone that we will follow the same procedure in this open meeting, and we will be given your 5 minutes. And so if there's anyone wanting to comment, please let me know.
Larry Store, 5015 Lafayette Avenue,
I want to make sure you're on the record.
Omaha, Nebraska. 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska. First of all, I'd like to comment on the Open Meetings Act. There are no rules printed today for this.
5 minutes.
And we have two bodies represented, the county board and the city council. Set of rules are both different. Now, the Open Meetings Act. You don't get to read it before you start, but I have read the state website outline of it. That is intended for the general public, people that are citizens and voters, they refer to as the electors. They're not intended per se for the bodies. But at one of the recent meetings, I was told at the microphone that that act is for you, and it is not. It is for us to be able to make comments and address our elected officials. And there have been a few times that I have, and I've been interrupted and even walked out for less than what other people have said, and for a lot less than what some of our elected people have said at the microphone. To me, that's a clear violation of the intent of the Open Meetings Act. And when any member of those boards let that occur, you're subject to violation of that act. Every one of you is, if you do not take issue with that. Enough on that. On this thing, I might live 20 years. I doubt if I'll live 40. But on economic benefit analysis and all these things we hear about, it's for the children, the best practices. There was some terminology used the other night that goes back quite a few years that I'm acquainted with because I've been involved with social service things that I won't go into. Economic benefit is like blowing smoke. You can't prove that. If you can prove that, then I suggest that we don't build anything because the benefits that you're all touting means we will not have any juveniles in our care. We do not have to educate them, re-educate them.
I should record his voice.
So let's don't build it. But if those facts and figures are correct, then I'd like to give you my $1 and have you give me back $4 or prorate it because I may or may not live another 20 years. I'm not asking you for 40 years, but I'd like my money back because this also, according to the state constitution, I'm not a lawyer. So correct me if I'm wrong. State constitution says they will not pass any special law. If we're subject to the state constitution, then we should not pass any special laws either to benefit any person or any corporation. And I think the intent of the state constitution is two public bodies such as the county board and the city council are not intended to have a private corporation to go around the citizen. And that's what's happening here. The citizens of this city and county, there's other people that live outside of Omaha that are involved, need to have a vote. But let's not make it on the basis of saving the children. Don't use our children, okay? Stop using our children. We all need to help. I've got some that need help too. But let's don't make this an issue of saving the children because it is somebody else's agenda. Those agendas are from outside the city of Omaha. And quite frankly, I'm tired of hearing about other cities and other best practices. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Here's my $1. $1's worth.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
You can advertise it.
No, keep your $1.
There you go.
Thanks.
Next.
Luis Jimenez, 518 North 40th Street. Good morning. I'm actually going to touch on some things that Larry said. Chris Rogers is going to be sitting on the board, so I basically see you guys as a committee, a county committee now. I recommend that you allow the public to speak on items individually, like the board members do, now that Chris is going to be here, so we can have more of a discussion. The sheriff should not be removing people from public bodies. And that's what's going on. Usually, parliamentary procedure allows for a sergeant at arms to have order in meetings. So it's a bit intimidating to have an officer come to you and say, you're not allowed to speak anymore. Over at the state legislature, they have people that have provide order. They don't have guns on their sides. with the comment. And then I think Mr. Christensen was talking about how the public may not be well aware how savings happen, where if you have a troubled youth go on the right path, that is a savings in the future because of all the services that won't have to be invested on that individual. But the public understands that. We know. Now, I'm 34. I know that when you move away from bad behavior, there's benefits. What the citizens don't want is a juvenile detention center right over there. That's the issue. It's not the money. Well, for me it was the processes, but Chris Rogers is going to be here, so he's kind of cleaning this place up. We don't want a juvenile detention down there. You can't get subleases in this area because of the adult correction center. That's an economic consideration. You know, Mr. Perrin had consideration for his building. You know, we can all have our considerations, but they do benefit kids at the end of the day when we think things through. We're now at the point where things are going to happen. The discussion is returning to the kids, so that's good. The programs are going to be benefited. My last question, if anybody wants to answer, is who on the county board, on the city council, supports this plan aside from Ben Gray? Has anybody on the board talked to council members to make sure that they're going to vote yes? Because they'll vote no and waste your guys' time, no problem. All your purpose, they'll say no to them, and you just wasted your time. Has anybody talked to council members? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, Bob Perrin. I expect to be here for 40 years, so no worry. I know we have some issues. We have a zoning issue. I understand we have to get Board of Appeals variance. What other appeals or variances are we requesting?
I think that's
That's the only one. To put a detention center in an urban core kind of thing. Okay. And do you have to prove anything to have that granted? Like hardship or just?
No, that specific requirement is for any zoning area.
Applies to all of them? Okay. Next one is, could we have access or can we see some of the reports or things that you based your designs and information on? Which would be maybe the site analysis for the other sites that you looked at, kind of a comparative thing. And the parking analysis, those are both big issues. And then the soil tests and the traffic studies. Seems like all those things that help influence your design. I would like to have a chance to review those if you could do that for me, please. Great. And then a couple of questions on the design itself. We know that going to court is very stressful for kids. And so then can you show me the path that they would take from their holding cells to the courtroom? Do you have that available, please?
TV back on. Turn the TV. Well, in any case, it's elevator ride and then that secure corridor that goes to an elevator that then these are an elevator in the youth center, then a secure corridor, and then an elevator in the tower.
Okay, and that was my question, because as I looked at what I thought the path would be, it goes past several utility facilities and loading docks and janitorial type access to maintenance facilities to get to the.
No, it's a secure corridor.
Okay, well, I'd be glad to see that. That would be great. And then when you're doing that, my other question is the stress these kids experience just because they're going to court. Where do they go to the restroom after they leave their housing unit? Is there a restroom available for these kids?
You mean in the courtroom?
in that path, on the pathway? Does it look
Well,
to you like
there's
they'd have to
there's a
escort them all the way back to the
there's a
cell?
restroom in their common area, and it's only about a minute walk.
Okay, so they'd have to take, so when I see the path, then I'll be able to understand what your thinking was on that, so that'd be great.
Okay, so,
You-
you go back, please. So this is the, excuse me, second level of the tower and second level of the youth center. So they go from their housing unit, they go through a door into a sally port, and then they take this corridor, which goes past, food services are off of that because the food services are serving the youth center. And then they take this corridor up, and there's two elevators. This elevator goes directly up to, in between a pair of courtrooms on third floor and a pair of courtrooms on fourth floor. And this elevator up near the top goes up to the north pair of courtrooms on third floor and fourth floor.
So when you get up to the courts level, you can point out the elevators.
Right, so the elevator comes out into here, and then they can either go into either courtroom. There's also a room to meet with their attorney. And then there's a holding cell for somebody that is, if these get, if one court runs over and we need to have the two separated, there's a room for them to go into. So you can have the youth that are going to either court waiting in here to go into either courtroom.
Okay, and restroom facilities for the kids, where are those?
That hasn't been,
This is a schematic level plan, so we have a design development level, and I think you have to have some faith that we know how to design these
Well, that's why I'm
buildings. When you
asking
get
these
to these
questions,
details, it's hard to at a schematic level, we may not have something covered, but.
right, so we plan to cover that, but the youth are not called over until they're ready to go. They don't have to wait 4 hours
Yeah.
for a courtroom.
So it's a 1 minute walk.
That's why I'm bringing that up,
Yeah.
because it's an issue that seemed concerning to me, and I've encountered that in other instances. So that's
Yeah.
important to address.
Yeah.
And then the pathway that you go through. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jordan Kermode.
Jordan, did you say Jordan?
Jordan Kermode, yes, ma'am. Coming from growing up in the area, being one of those kids that there's a very slim chance that I got away with what I did. And I was saved by grace, by faith, by programs, by coaches, by teachers, by the military. But I had a lot of friends as well as a lot of family that have been through the system. Have any of you ever been served time, been in the jail, have kids that have done that? And so you've walked along with them through this process, and you've seen the pain and the angst and the issues and the heartache and the mental jump-throughs and then delineation of their character and their abilities in order to progress it. So imagine you're walking through those corridors. And then it's a bit heart-wrenching in order to see that we didn't learn anything from Joggers Canyon, and we still think that redesigning our urban corridor as well as the eyesore that's over on Leavenworth, especially when there's a 23-acre lot with for less than $5 million that's open, that's actually a better point for access for North and South Omaha, which are the primary issue points. And that's abandoned land that's essentially sitting right in front of our face, as well as working with a lot of people that come in through the city, international students, serving cross country, bringing people here. It's difficult to walk them around downtown and like, oh yeah, here's this beautiful brick building and here's a jail and here's another jail. And it's heartbreaking in order to see that we haven't learned that yet, and that we haven't learned to be more creative with our resources, especially when we have open on land that has the ability to do that. And biggest saving grace in South Omaha right now is community centers. Biggest saving grace in North Omaha is community centers. And putting a detention center that's difficult to access, a lot more difficult than what this other 23 acres plot of land would be. And it's just, we look at it from a bureaucratic side, but we've never looked at it from the child's eyes. And beg the question, how many of these kids or how many of these prior kids have been asked about this? And how many programs have been implemented prior to this? Because I know a few dozen entities that I work with around the metropolitan area that feed the mission or to divert this, to avoid this, to prevent them from having to go through this. And this design and this, I understand the co-location idea, that expedite that and make it more convenient for the attorneys, but we're doing more damage to these kids by creating this place and this place, as well as putting in the middle of all these high rises when all these kids are now going to look at themselves like, well, I'm never going to be able to do anything other than go to jail around here. So essentially we're saying start here on farm and not let them work in a few years, and all those high rises and money that's going through here, it's not for you, it's for those that made the right decisions. So I just beg the question, at what point in time are we going to look at the thought process of the young men and women that are going to have to go through this, and what they're really going to have to go through going through this, and what other resources and what other ways can we manifest this creatively to make this more feasible, not just for tourists, not just for community, not just for the avoidance of joggers getting mishaps, as well as tearing down our historic buildings. But now to have to look out and see another jail in our historic district and tear down buildings that we're going to regret. We're going to, I can almost guarantee 15 years after this is done, because I know that right now I'm not going to be listened to, and that what I say is probably more likely not going to make a difference. But that's, as a community leader, it makes me question if this is where I should be when we're not listening to the generation that's to inherit this world. I mean, we have the boomers, we have the Z, we have the millennials and posts, and this process is going to take another 5 years to get it built. Some of you are going to be retired, and then the next generation will inherit it, as well as myself and my fellow men and women will inherit it. And we're going to look back at this and say, we could have done better.
Tear it down.
I just hope and pray that we'll look at more creative ways to not negate our historic downtown as well as the great facilities that we have here. But look at ways we can access and make it more accessible and more creative for the young men and women that is going to be served. So,
Thank you, Jordan. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? With that, oh, hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Norma McNair, 1802 Brenda Drive, Bellevue, Nebraska. I keep coming. There are lots of times that these meetings are held that other people would love to be here, but they weren't. They can't be here. And I want to say the biggest thing I see is that we have the space. And we've traveled all over to see what they have done because they don't have the space. And I just think we have a wonderful opportunity to co-locate there where we now have it. And as far as co-location, it's right up the street from UNMC. And they could work with these kids that we're finding out many of them need that help more than they need some of this help. So that's just my thought. And I still think people care a lot. They care about the children. And we want to vote, and I think there are about 5 other things, but I can't think of them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just one comment. It's not the co-location that's the big issue, it's the village around it. And growing up in North Omaha, the environment around them is what is pushing to this place and then pulling them back into it. And the programs in order to pull them away. And somebody that's built these programs here across the country and internationally, the people that say, come here, listen, you're better than this, is what makes the difference way more than
With that, no other questions or comments, no other business for this 501c3. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Ferguson.
Yes.
Levy.
Yes.
Christensen.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Thank you.